to be presenters, but they want to still help and discuss the cases. And I think this bowl is a really great opportunity for undergrad students who are in like bioethics minors, or they're pre-health, right? Pre-med, pre-dental, pre-nursing, or they're interested in law or grad studies in bioethics, really anything relating to any healthcare profession. The structure of the bowl, pretty much, we actually got permission to use the rules that IEB has. Um, but it's really similar. There's three main differences that are just worth pointing out. Bioethics Bowl doesn't have a regional competition where the top schools from the region go on to nationals. We just have a national that's held every April. And it's really whatever school registers for the event gets to compete in that one. I'll say more about that in a minute for what's coming up for 2026. The other difference is bioethics bowl cases include case questions for each case. There's usually 3 questions, and one of them will be chosen to be asked at the competition. And so schools can kind of practice around the questions that they know they will get one of those questions. Of course, Ethics Bowl doesn't do that. And there's a big debate around whether you should have questions or not, but that's how we do it with Bioethics Bowl. And then the other main difference, of course, is that the cases really focus only on bioethical issues. That's things around clinical bioethics, healthcare, health insurance. We always have cases on like animal ethics and research, environmental ethics as it relates to human health. And then there have been cases recently on AI and biotechnologies, because that's a big, thing that's blooming in bioethics. But like I said, everything else pretty much just follows the IEB rules. And I have a link. I can also put this in the chat, but there's a link here to the case packet from this last year's Bioethics Bowl, so people can take a look and see what cases look like. But again, they're very similar in style and length and, the kinds of issues they raise. They just focus on healthcare specifically. Okay. So like I said, I can drop these links in the chat after so people can find them. In terms of governance of this, I just thought I'd mention this really quick. We have an executive board. There are 7 of us. I'm one of the board members. Richard is one. And I have a list there of the other folks who are on the board. We're all either coaches or people who have hosted the bowl before. And we're from all across the US as well. The Bioethics Bowl isn't affiliated with a particular association or organization, like IEB is connected with API. We used to have a connection to the American Society of Bioethics and Humanities, but that was ended about 8 years ago. So all the decision-making around rules and all of that is done by the board, and we consult at a yearly coach meeting with the coaches at the competition just to get kind of the sense of the body and then make any rule changes based on that. And then just quickly with the history, the first bowl that we had for bioethics was in 2008. That was held at Union College in Schenectady, New York. And they had 11 cases and 6 teams for that first year. We've had a bowl every year ever since, except of course, spring 2020, Northeastern was going to host and we got shut down because of COVID. But then a fun fact for that next year, we were really worried if we didn't have a bowl of some kind that it might just kind of disintegrate. So Oklahoma State did a virtual bowl that year. And it was pretty successful actually. But each year we get about 16 to 24 teams competing. That really depends on the host school's capacity. Because of course, the more teams you allow, the more coaches, judges and moderators you have to have, and it gets really cumbersome to host. So just looking ahead to 2026, and then I'm done. It's going to be hosted by the University of Pittsburgh, and Cindy McCarthy, who is actually one of our executive board members, is going to be the organizer for that. We know it's going to be the weekend of April 11th. And the cases will come out in February after the registration period. So the period for teams to prepare would be from when they come out in February until the competition in April. They're going to send a save the date out in October. There'll be a mass email that goes out with that, to whoever we know is interested. You'll get a save the date with all the information about registration. And if you want to be added to that email list, I've put Cindy McCarthy's email address in there. Just note there's a dot. So it's cindy.mccarthy@pitt.edu. And she'll add you to the list so that you'll receive the save the date and all the emails about the upcoming bowl. And there's also a move afoot to get a new permanent National Bioethics Bowl website where people can go, and all the information about future hosts and links to things will be hosted. So that's going to be coming this fall. And then just one last thing, because the interest in Bioethics Bowl has really expanded rapidly, we're too small to have regionals. We're getting too big for the nationals to include everybody. So we're going to do a new registration procedure for this next spring where, just to be fair as possible, so it's not the Hunger Games, teams who are interested in competing will register their interest by January. If there are more teams that register interest than the 16 spots that there were going to be, then there'll be a random lottery that's held to draw teams who can register. And that's going to be a live stream so everyone can see, if their team gets drawn. And then the teams that are drawn to participate will have a week to accept. After that, if any decline, then the spots would go to the remaining teams that weren't drawn. And the schools that are selected and want to take their spot will pay their registration fee, which I think will be around $300, $320 for this next year. So that's kind of the info that we know so far for the next upcoming bowl in 2026. And I'll pass on, I guess I stop sharing here and pass on to Leo, right? And then at the end, Richard, we can have discussion or questions.
Yeah, but I was going to ask you one question real quick since you were mentioning cases. And I don't remember where things stood because I missed the last meeting. Do we need case writers for this year? And if so, do you want to tell the folks if you're interested in writing a case, or did Cindy have that all sewn up?
I think she has it well taken care of. But that is another thing. One of the fun activities is the opportunity to write cases for the Bioethics Bowl. Some years they even offer a stipend, right, to write a case or two. I think for this coming year, there are already something like 12 cases committed. But she would send out information, I think, with the save the date if there's need for any more of them.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, yeah. So let's turn it over to Leo Kirby, who is the new director of the National High School Ethics Bowl. Not that new anymore, right? You've been at it for a little while.
Yeah, I have a year under my belt now, so
The current,
it's not brand new. Yeah. But thank you. It's great to see everybody. As was mentioned, I'm Leo Kirby. I'm the director of the National High School Ethics Bowl. Let me see if I can share a presentation here. Can you guys see that okay? Okay, great. All right, cool. So, I mean, the National High School Ethics Bowl, the structure is very similar to the collegiate level ethics bowl. So I'm not going to talk too much about what our actual matches look like, and instead I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of the program and ways you can get involved. I do think there are some key differences at the high school level, largely around how we approach case writing and the types of questions that we ask our students. There's a little bit of a difference developmentally in what we expect from our students, but it's still a fantastic place. And I think that it's a lot of times the first contact that these students are having with philosophy more generally even. And so it's a really special program for a lot of reasons. But that's one of my favorites. But of course, also developing the skills to discuss hard topics in a way that's constructive and effective is really, really great to get people started on that at a young age. So anyway, here's our mission statement for the National High School program. We promote respectful, supportive, in-depth discussion of ethical issues. This is going to feel familiar. If you're familiar with the collegiate program, or of course, if you're familiar with our program, the missions are very, very close. We're trying to create a space where students can learn how to discuss hard, challenging topics in a way that's constructive. It's a true dialogue. People are listening to each other. People are working towards a solution rather than just being right for the sake of being right. So it's something that I think the high schoolers naturally, they haven't been trained to do it, but I think that it's something we all kind of crave. And so they do a really great job once they're introduced to the structure that allows them to do that. So the NHSEB began at the University of Chapel Hill in North Carolina through the Parr Center, which is the center that I'm working at. Oh, I lost my presentation here. It's the product of a collaboration with the Squire Foundation. Of course, Robert Leidenson created the IEB, and this is sort of like a development of that we started working at in 2012. Since then, we've expanded. We're now in 35 states. We have 42 regionals. Over 400 schools across the country are participating, which, some schools bring multiple teams. So we end up having around 550 teams. And almost 5,000 students participated in our competition events in 2024, 2025, which I think is pretty exciting. We have a whole another section of students that we don't have as clear data on. And these are, of course, the students who engage with Ethics Bowl in the classroom through classroom experiences, but never actually go to a competition. So I think that's one of the wonderful things about a program like Ethics Bowl at any level is that it really effectively translates into classroom material. So we do have a pretty large population of students who are engaging with ethics and ethics bowls, but just not at a competitive level in high school. Oh, sorry about that. So after our regionals, which take place at the state level, we direct our students off to divisionals, which are sort of regionally grouped states. There's one hosted at the Prindle Institute in DePauw, which is, of course, where IEB lives right now. And we host one at UNC, but then we also have one at the Center for Public Philosophy in California and the Cincinnati Ethics Center. These are really fantastic online events, and it's a way for our students who did really well at the regionals to have another level of competition before the national event, because there's only so many seats at nationals, but we of course want the students who did well to still have something that they can go on to do. Of the polls that we've run, 99% of our population agrees that NHSEB is encouraging critical thinking. It's encouraging engaging with different views, teamwork, moral engagement across different dividing lines that tends to really be challenging to overcome for adults, let alone for high schoolers. But then, of course, this last statistic here is this interesting one to me, which is just that NHSEB has sort of encouraged students to explore philosophy more rigorously, which I think is cool. I'm just moving through this as quick as I can so we can get to the Q&A section, which anyway, we have some testimonial. We've had our students say that they feel that the Ethics Bowl provides them with a safe space to talk about these challenging topics. When you're in college, right, like you have these discussion-based classrooms, which is really special and fantastic, and it gives you a way to sort of practice these skills. And the IEB is a way for them to do that too. But at a high school level, we find that a lot of our students haven't really explored expressing their true opinions about these hard topics. And instead, they've sort of find themselves repeating what they expect is like the air quotes right answer. But Ethics Bowl, of course, gives them a place where they can actually truly represent their own views about topics. And then they're learning how to do that in a way that's effective, and they're learning to defend their views and question why they have those views in ways that I think, of course, is really positive. But the key word here is that it's safe for them to do so. They're allowed to make mistakes, and they're not penalized for that. So we just like that our students feel that, right? Because it's something that we're working towards. Of course, debate's a game, academic is a game, but NHSEB is more real for some of our participants because there's true conversations here that are representing their own views. So how can you get involved? I mean, the first question that you have to ask yourself if you wanted to be involved with NHSEB is whether or not there's already an existing local regional. This QR code or the URL on screen here will take you to our regional list page, and it'll just show you the regionals that are happening at universities across the country currently. Just ignore the dates that are on there. Some of those dates are still from 2025's events, and I leave those there for now until the start of next season in September, so that people can have an idea for when regionals might take place, because they tend to fall around the same date range every year. But these are great places to volunteer. If you're nearby one, it's a great place to send students if you have kids or if you're a teacher of children. It's a lot more convenient if there's an existing regional to get involved. But if there's not a regional, well, okay, if there is a regional, if you're a teacher, right, yeah, you can bring ethics bowl into your classroom, whether there's one close to you or not. But coaching teams is super helpful. Starting clubs in your schools are super helpful. But the biggest thing that you can do is volunteer. Of course, there's divisionals. There's also nationals, which happens at North Carolina over the same weekend, it looks like, as Bioethics Bowl. So good taste there, I suppose. But for the regionals that'll happen in January, hopefully they're more local to wherever you are, and you can be a judge no matter what your education level. You can moderate, you can just help as a general volunteer. We always are looking for people to help, and it's a really fantastic thing to get to watch these young people express themselves in such concise and effective ways. It's pretty magical. It gives me a lot of hope for the future, and hopefully you'll have the same experience if you do volunteer. If there's not a regional near you, and you happen to work at a university, that's super helpful. If you think that your university would be interested in hosting, you should contact me. We have all sorts of documentation on how ethics bowls can really be beneficial to the university more broadly, or to your graduate student base or your undergraduate student base. And of course, it's great for the high schoolers in the area as well. And we have resources that will show you exactly what goes into those events. But I'm not going to get into that now. If it's something you're interested in, you should shoot me an email. Otherwise, if you happen to be a parent, teacher, or student in the area, and you think that the NHSEB is something that would really fit nicely with your community, starting a team, creating some buzz is really fantastic, because then as we approach potential organizers, we have sort of a standing energy that we can rely on and point to and say, hey, look, there's already people who want to do this. And it tends to make the process more smooth. That's all I've got. It's just going to be super brief, but if you are interested in being involved with an HSEB, or if you have more questions, you should shoot me an email at any time. I've got my email here on the screen. So sorry to blaze through that, but I wanted to make sure we had enough time for Q&A.
That's great. Thanks, Leo. I'll go third, and I'm going to talk about my experience with Ethics Bowl in the prisons. And I don't have a PowerPoint presentation. And one, for a kind of very main reason that I'll get to in a moment. But second, for another reason where I realized recently about myself that I'm what I call a selective Luddite. I don't hate technology, but I hate technology when it inconveniences me, even in the slightest. So this is one of those moments, right? Do I want to make a presentation? I really dislike them. But kudos to those who don't and do. It might be more useful. But the other more important reason is you'll notice with Jen's presentation and Leo's, they would just sort of march through all this. This is what it is. This is what it's about. This is how you get involved. Here's the numbers to call and all that. None of that applies to Ethics Bowl in the prisons. It seems like every case is different. And so what I thought might be more useful, because I've had a lot of people say, how do I get involved with this? Is for me to talk about sort of the range of possibilities, the things that you might encounter in attempting to do this. So I'll tell you a little bit about my experience first, and then go through some of those points. And again, I'll reiterate with Karen, who does it in the same prison I do, feel free to chime in and add anything you want to add. So Kyle Robertson, I think, did the first Ethics Bowl in a prison, and he had Bob Ladenson and I fly out to observe it. I was the chair of the IEB at the time. And that was really nice, and it was inspiring. And so I instantly wanted to be involved. So that the first thing I did is I got back and I contacted the head of education at the Utah State Correctional Facility via email. And I'm still awaiting a response, right? So the first lesson learned is you can't just sort of waltz into the prison to do Ethics Bowl. You need some sort of angle in. And so you have to find some group or organization that's involved there. It may be, a public group, but more often than not, it's going to be a school. So in our area, Salt Lake Community College offers associate's degrees, and the University of Utah now offers bachelor's degrees in the prison. And so you can go in with one of those organizations in conjunction with the educational group in the prison if you have something that they're interested in. So we eventually found the right people, we being Rachel and I, and we went, this is just prior to the start of the pandemic, into the Utah facility. And we decided to do two ethics bowls, one in the men's facility, or one of the men's facilities, and the other in the women's facility. So we set these up as 8-week programs, and we alternated weeks. So it was 16 weeks altogether, right? We'd do week 1 in the men's facility, week 2 in the women's, week 3 in the men's, and so forth, working towards 2 events, right? So it's not like you end up having an ethics bowl, competition with lots of teams and declaring winners, but rather matches or sort of like exhibitions where we would bring our students in to compete with the incarcerated students, and maybe 2 or 3 matches for each team. The pandemic hit, and we were, I don't know, 12 or 13 of the 16 weeks in, and of course the prison shut down. So we decided to take another stab at it a couple of years later, and then we thought that that doing it 16 weeks in a row, where we would go in for 3 or 4 hours, in addition to our regular teaching, was too much. So we decided to do 8 weeks in the women's facility, and then we got Karen Mizell and Jeff Nielsen from Utah Valley to do the same thing in the men's facility, and not concurrently, but we finished up and then they started theirs, and that worked much better. So and then we had this wonderful event. Karen and Jeff came to judge. We brought in teams of students. We had a team from Weber State, a team from Utah State, and they each had a match with the incarcerated team, and lots of people came. The press was there, and the provost of my university was there. Rachel's not in the room. Her provost couldn't be bothered, but mine was there. So that has some value, and it was nice, and I think it was really rewarding for the students. Okay, so some of the things, right? Getting started, you have to sort of determine how you're going to do it in terms of, is this going to be something that's paid, in which case you need to affiliate yourself with a degree granting program. Are you doing this as a volunteer? You have to find the right people. Again, that's some group that offers education inside the prison from outside. There's lots of technical things. You need to get clearance. Everyone that goes into the prison has to go through a certain kind of training. We like to bring the students in. The first time we did it, we opened it up to a lot of students from a lot of schools. And one of Karen's students came in. He was there working kind of like a teaching assistant, Ruben, every single week. And he was just fantastic. But he had to go through this sort of training clearance process as well. And so if you want to get the students involved, that needs to happen some months before. Get them involved when you get involved. Don't count on being able to do it, as you're starting up or right in the moment. You have to get university buy-in from your school. I imagine lots of universities won't recognize this as counting towards service or scholarship if you end up writing about it, often because these things are for public audiences, but others do. I think our school, we wrote a new mission statement, and it was around the same time, and they were saying a lot of things about outreach, and suddenly I was just golden there. It's like, oh, you're going into the prisons. That's exactly what we want. But the first time I went through, they could care less. They were not particularly bothered. But despite the fact that it might not have this sort of practical value, I think it's a meaningful pedagogical experience. It's a great learning experience, and it affords really great high impact educational experiences for your students. None of my students that competed in the prison came out of there viewing that as another ethics bowl match. They had all sorts of preconceived notions that were what kind of wiped away in the moment. They felt compassion in some cases that I don't think they expected to feel. They saw incarcerated students as human beings, which of course they are, but you'd be surprised at the number of people who don't view them that way. And so, even if you can't get the buy-in, that's good. Once you're in, there's a number of challenges. I say I'm getting kind of close to the end of my time too, so I'm going to go quickly. You can't, at least at our prison, and this is probably true in lots of cases, you can't bring things in, right? They don't have access to the internet in our facility, although Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's changing. But if we would have these cases and they'd say, well, we need to do outside research, they would make a list of things they wanted us to research, and then we'd just come in and tell them because they couldn't Google, what actually happened in this ethics bowl case that, they eventually got resolved or some such. We had to get certain books approved. Matt's here. Today's the day of shamelessly plugging Matt's book. Our incarcerated students loved Ethics in a Nutshell, and we were able to get that book approved in advance and bring in 15 copies each time we did it. And so that was good. But you'll need to get all the materials approved. It's also the case that prisons shut down, and this happens a lot. During the pandemic, it shut down to external guests for several months at a time. But very often, you'll go in and this cell block or that cell block will have lost their privileges, right? So you need to give yourself enough time to do all the things that you want to do, knowing full well that some of the students on any given night might not be able to make it, which frankly is not all that different from teaching, ethics bowl students in college. The kids sometimes don't show up. But I remember the first time I went into San Quentin with Kyle, they had two teams, and they were, I think, each doing a match against the Santa Cruz team. And several of the people were in a cell block. This was for the big demonstration that had got shut down for disciplinary reasons. And so even in that most important moment, there were students that weren't allowed to make it in. So this happens quite a bit. There's also issues communicating with the students. It's, you can get messages to them, like if you're going to want to talk about a particular case and you didn't mention it, but you need to tell the people that you're working with to tell the prison chaplain who will relay the message to the students. So communication is tough, and sometimes content gets rejected by the prison. So we were doing several ethics bowl cases, and one was on the prisons, and the prisoners wanted to talk about that case because they had real things to say, and the warden shut it down. And they said, for your demonstration with the press here, I can't have them talking about what life was like in the prison during the pandemic. Okay, let's see. Maybe I'll stop there. Other than to say the students get so much out of it, the incarcerated students as well as the students from your university. If you have the opportunity to do this, it's well worthwhile. Every time I went there, I thought, oh, I got to teach for 4 hours like I always do. And I go home kind of with, watering up a little bit, just feeling something that I couldn't even put into words other than it was very gratifying. So I don't know, Karen, do you have anything? Am I missing anything significant? You're on mute, Karen.
Sorry. I was thinking one thing to add was when we're talking about involved populations, when the Utah Valley team hosted a final round with the incarcerated team, there was a shutdown, and the prisoners or the incarcerated individuals had to go back to be counted, but the guards had been so engaged in the cases and the arguments that I suspect they were involved in bringing them back or facilitating a reconvening of the teams. And also, there are also rules about communicating with prisoners for good reason, but one individual managed, there was another teacher from a local school, and the individual sent a news article about one of the cases that he had read in the newspaper to me through the mail. And what I loved about that was, this is a person who's engaged in learning and education and expanding his mind. And that's something, it's such a privilege for them to have these classes, engage in an activity like this. And you're right about the students being involved. The chaplains are interesting. I know we're running out of time. I won't take too long, but the chaplains were very interesting to me because they got in touch with me about doing some continuing education for their own certifications. So I thought that was interesting too. So it had a big impact.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So let's just open it up. If anyone has questions about any of the above or anything else, Ethics Bowl, tangent, related, tangential, adjacent, I guess is the word I wanted. Yeah, South Texas College.
Yeah, with the Bioethics Bowl, are there plans to expand to regionals as well?
So we just had a conversation about this at the coaches meeting for the last bowl. And a couple of schools said, like, well, we could, try having a regional eventually, right? And maybe start with 2 or something. But there are so many issues we'd have to work out, right? One is not conflicting with Ethics Bowl, because a lot of Bioethics Bowl teams also do Ethics Bowl, right? And nationals run into February. So if we did regionals for Bioethics Bowl, there'd be worries about like the potential conflict. And we're just in that clunky space right now where it's not quite big enough to have regionals, but it's getting kind of too big for nationals. So that's still under construction, I would say. I don't know, Richard, if you have anything to add about that, if you remember from the meeting.
No, I think that's about it. It's it's not that hard to have regionals, but there aren't enough schools to do it. And then we also have to factor in that it's expensive, and if we had 20 regions around the country, people wouldn't travel very far, but you're basically asking folks to come, a halfway or a quarter of the way across the country for one regional, and then if they advance, go to nationals again. So there has to be a real need for it, I think. Karen, on mute.
Sorry. One thing that might be an option is what the National High School Ethics Bowl has done, and they've gone to digital online regionals. And so that cuts down on funding for, having to find funding for the high schools for these regionals too. So maybe that's something to think about.
It is. When we talked about it with the coaches, one of the things that was said was a lot of the coaches didn't want to just be involved in a virtual competition. And if you were taking, the top 16, but, there were 40 teams to start with, then that majority of teams would be getting less out of it. So there was a little, I don't know if we want to just do a regional qualifying thing. I was kind of thinking maybe having a virtual bowl for the teams that didn't get into the national bowl, but there didn't seem to be a lot of enthusiasm for that. Yeah, it's tricky because I think everybody wants to at least do something in person some of the time, right? It's part of the experience.
How many teams do you guys say that you have? Because I was just thinking it's like such a shame that they don't all get to participate.
Jen, since I hosted the last one, should I answer this?
Yeah, go ahead.
I've got the numbers fresh in my head. So we opened it up to 16, and we had a wait list of 11 schools almost instantly. So Mike Poppich and I talked to a bunch of colleagues and friends, and were able to determine that we could get enough judges to have 20 teams in the competition, and that stretched us pretty thin. And so we still ended up with 7 teams on the wait list. We had one team drop out right before the end, and we could have taken one of those, although it was nobody wanted to come that late because they hadn't been prepping the whole time like the other teams had. So at least, as far as willingness to come to Utah last spring, I think we ended up with 27 total teams attempting to join, or 27 schools.
And well, for the prison stuff, if no one else has anything to say about that, I was interested. Like, I don't know. Sorry, I apologize if this was covered, but how do they like, how do the prisons continue doing ethics bowl, like when the press has died down and stuff like that? Like, what do they do?
They don't. We've offered to go back in, and the group that we work with, which is the University of Utah's Prison Education Project, is installing a degree program. And they said, well, we don't have the manpower for this right now, but they hope to have us come back in. But I think it just happens when volunteers are willing to go in. And when we're done, there's no continuation of it. I'm guessing the incarcerated students get the benefit of it, and they maybe talk about issues differently than they would have otherwise, having had a little training in moral reasoning and whatnot. But yeah, if there's no one doing it, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, you and Karen mentioned the interest from the chaplains. I wonder if there's a way to make up some sort of guidance for ethics bowls by chaplains, where they can just do it on their own. But ideally, you'd have experienced folks go in and do it. So thank you for doing that, man. I knew there was one in California. I didn't realize y'all did it in Utah as well. That's cool.
Yeah, thanks.
Richard, I thought I saw that there was a prison group that participated in your regional bowl, but is that mistaken? Or maybe there was like a virtual one. Was there not a more official participation?
There was. I wish we had Mike Ingram here. They competed in the Ethics Bowl Northwest Regional. They managed to get a team to zoom in. There's also been talk, I think it's Mike Stock and Rachel have been talking about creating a prison ethics bowl for teams of incarcerated students that have access to Zoom rooms and can be beamed about. Our facility doesn't have that now, but it's happened and there's discussion, but it wasn't in our region. But it's very cool that it happened. And then there was the question about what to do if they, qualified for nationals. And I believe we'd bend over backwards to facilitate, some virtual competition room and get them in.
Think you don't sleep coming up with ideas, Richard.
I just tell other people's ideas. I'm the the messenger.
Leo, I also had a question about high school ethics bowl. I used the QR code to look up the state, right, by state.
Yeah.
And I saw for Illinois, it's like Southern Illinois, Edwardsville.
Yeah.
So do they not do one like in the Chicago area anymore? Because I haven't judged for a while, but they had like quite a few teams in this area. Do they just all go to that one now, or?
Yeah, this was the first year that we didn't have. It's usually Chicago Institute of Technology, IIT. They weren't able to host in 2024, 2025. So we're working on finding a new host for the Chicago area because there are too many teams to effectively spread them to other regions. So hopefully we'll have someone for 2025, 2026. Otherwise, it's going to have to be an online space probably.
I'll volunteer John Garcia, who's at Harper, but he may not agree with that. So I just got a message from Deborah Maurer saying, wasn't there a team that helped draft cases also? I don't remember the details of this, but that's right. There were some cases produced, and I think we might have used one last year at the regional competition. it was yeah, and that might have been Mike Stock's group. I think they produced like 3 or 4 cases for the regional competitions, and we ended up actually using one of them. So good. Yeah, Deb, thanks for the reminder.
Well, I have a question actually for the National High School Ethics Bowl. Maybe this is too specific, I guess, but we want to. Well, we just had they had to leave, but we had some dual enrollment students here who wanted to do Ethics Bowl in their high school, but like they're only doing it because they're connected with South Texas College. So like, how would that work? Do you know anything about that, or like what they should do?
So I guess dual enrollment is totally fine. They can start a team and compete. We'll have Texas A&M and as our new Houston area for this year, and then we have. I'm sorry, my dog is making a lot of noise. It's distracting. Anyway, yes, it's totally fine for them to participate. They'll just start a team and register as any other school would, and that's not an issue at all.
Can I say something? I'm speaking a little before the time, or my time, or before we have these things left in place, but I have appointments with concurrent enrollment advisors at our school to try to develop a lower division ethics class for those dual enrollment kids to help boost the high school ethics bowl so they can get credit for it too. So that's in the works, but I don't know where it'll go. Somebody might just drop a hammer on it, but who knows?
Okay, do we have any other questions?
I just have a quick question about, I wrote down, so Matt, your ethics in a nutshell text, and I'm trying to look it up while we're in this Zoom meeting, but this was like written for Ethics Bowl, is that right?
No, it's just for ethics intro students. But you can use it for ethics bowls, and it's open source. It's in PDF. It's actually at a blog that I run, ethicsbowl.org. Just go to the resources page there, and you can download the full PDF and also access the audiobook. So it's my lovely East Tennessee accent for 100 minutes rather than 100 pages. So thank you for your interest. It's all free.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Jen, if you didn't get all that, send me an email. I've got the PDF and I'll forward it to you. Yeah, Matt, that's a really nice thing you do for the community. So,
oh, my pleasure. Thank you all for putting it to good use. I appreciate it.
Much appreciated.
I should say thank you, Matt, because I've used that book for years with my high school ethics bowl kids, my collegiate kids, and it's a wonderful book. It's a wonderful resource. So thank you so much.
Oh, y'all are making my day. Thank you.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions, we're close enough to out of time to give ourselves an extra 3-minute break before the next one. So at the bottom of the hour, we've got the final session, I think, of the tracks, and then we'll meet after that in the Zoom room number 1 for the final plenary. Thank you all very much. Leo and Jen, appreciate you joining this this panel.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
Thank you.